I want the magnetism to flow.
Right.
I want the energy to be high. I want to give you energy. I want to get energy, right? And like for the longest time, I never put myself in win-win situations because I was always okay losing. All the things that are happening behind the scenes to get to that final point, to that iceberg moment, we're all going through the same shit.
Right.
Especially as dads, especially as husbands, especially as business owners, whatever it is.
Right.
Like, we're all going through that.
Yeah. Jim Morris, welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. How are you, bro?
Absolutely wonderful, man. Thanks for having me.
Dude.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm pumped to have you on, brother. Little sleep deprived, I would imagine, with the 7-week-old at home, right? You're a father times 2 now with
Just a little bit.
2 babies now. Mama's doing good and everything.
Things are good, man.
All right.
Things are good. You know, that first, couple weeks is massive transition, transformation, all of it, man.
Yep.
It's a unique process. It's a unique period of time. But I'm blessed and I'm grateful, and I'm just excited for what the future holds.
Yeah, man. Fatherhood is amazing. Everyone's happy and healthy, so that's great.
Yeah, man.
Can't ask for more than that. Well, let's dive into it, man. You're a husband, father, entrepreneur, but I personally know you best for your focus on making an impact as it relates to human connection. So I'd love to start with that because I think we can dovetail off of human connection way beyond just business. But tell me a little bit about that, what it means to you, and let's just have that conversation, bro.
Yeah. Human connection is probably the most important thing in my entire life. And why I say that is because about a year and a half ago, there was a period of time where I was speaking on all these stages. I was hosting all these events, these workshops, right? Like all these things were going on, and I was having massive success. And I found myself in different groups. I found myself with different experiences, adventures, connected with folks that I'd read about, dream about, never thought I'd be in the same room with,
Right.
let alone having an engaging conversation that completely moves the needle in my life, and in most cases, sharing things that would help and be beneficial to those folks in their life.
Right.
And what I realized was about a year and a half ago, as I was on a hike, doing a 7-mile hike, I needed some alone time. I wanted to spend that quiet time with myself. And I started to think back about all the things that I've done over the last 20 or 30 years, and all the businesses, and why I was in real estate and made some massive capital gains, and why I, was in the F&B industry and sold my frozen beverage company, and, all these kind of random things, right? Now, there was a purpose behind a lot of that. There was a plan, a strategy. I like those industries. I like those things. My role within the organization, in some of those things, when I had partners, I took the role that I wished and wanted. But during that reflection moment, I realized, wow, I would have nothing without people.
Yeah.
And people are the power, right? We're the ones that develop the tech. We're the ones that, figure out the automations, and we utilize these systems and all these amazing things that we're continuing to pile on in 24, 25, 26 for the next, decade.
Yeah.
But it really comes from a person. So after realizing, okay, all these amazing experiences and all these things that happened negatively to me, there was someone there. There was someone to pull me out of the darkness. There was someone to celebrate on the rooftops when we were crushing it and everything was amazing. And in those moments where I felt beaten up, no support, the world closing in on me, drinking way too much, where was I? I was in a lonely state. So throughout that process, it engaged a situation and a scenario where I started to do a ton of research. And in that research, what I read was loneliness is the silent killer. And what I also read was there's so many opportunities that people don't take or they miss because of one relationship, one situation or scenario where they could have pulled in a resource. They could have called a friend. They could have, got some advice. And growing up in my life with my parents being addicted to OxyContin and, going through some of those struggles, I found myself in those lonely moments.
Yeah. And you had to be very self-sufficient and everything, right? So
exactly.
yeah,
So
to survive.
yeah. So what I realized is, wow, everything in my life has been around this concept of human connection. And when I started to apply that to sales, when I started to apply human connection to leadership, when I started to apply it to strategy, meaning like if I'm going to go get X or Y or Z or create X or Y or Z, my first thought is, who can I do it with?
Exactly.
who can we collab on this with? Like, because I want to do it with people, but I also am in a situation and scenario where I know that I can't impact as many people as I want. 1,100,100 entrepreneurs and business owners before I die. That's my number. I can't do that alone.
Right.
And every time I've tried to run through a wall, I've hit it and I've fallen down and I've gotten back up and I'm like, let's run through that wall again. Well, sometimes you don't have to run through walls when you've got relationships.
Exactly.
When you've got people, when you are showing those folks how important they are to you, that they feel heard, they feel seen. And it's not that difficult. It's just we've got to have a strategy,
right? And
we've got to focus on it and have clarity around why we're doing it and how to do it.
Definitely.
So that's what I love, man. That's what I love to do, brother.
I love it too because, I work specifically with men in my program, but I say a lot of the same things because I think especially with men specifically and dads, we've been led to believe that men are not relational creatures. And it's like, if you're a human being, you need relationship, period. Like human connection is something we all need. It's a need we all have. It just manifests differently between men and women, right?
100%.
But to that point, you said isolation is the silent killer. I say that all the time. I think it's the number one cause of men's problems today.
Totally.
It may not be the thing that physically kills you, but it essentially opens the door to all of the things that men go into, right? You're isolated, so you start drinking. You're isolated, so you start looking at porn. You're isolated, so you contemplate suicide.
Yeah.
And, men commit suicide 3 to 4 times more often than women. So clearly men are getting it wrong, right? But I love how you learned this first for business, but we were talking backstage about how you've also recognized that, hey, these skills are even more important outside of business, right? It's great for business for sure. No question. I've always said that, like, whatever line of work you're in, it's a people business.
Yep.
Even in the military, we said that, right? Hey, this is a people business, right? It's about people because it is.
Totally.
But talk about a little bit more in your journey of just you've become kind of the human connection guy, right? That's kind of your claim to fame, so to speak, and what you help others master from a business point of view. But how has that transformed you as a husband, as a father, with your friendships? I'd love to kind of get into that a little bit.
Great question. So yeah, I mean, just to be completely candid is I started researching this a year and a half ago from business, went so deep into it, started implementing, building workshops, working one-on-one with folks, and seeing the massive gains. And what I realized is, wow, I am just so pigeonholed on the business side because I struggled in my first 3 businesses. And I wanted to provide this solution and resource so other people didn't have to go through what I went through.
Exactly.
But in that, what I realized was, well, if I'm thinking about all of the things related to humans, what's most important to me? What's my definition of success? And the human connection piece, I believe, starts with myself. What's my relationship with myself?
Yeah.
Right? What am I saying when no one's hearing or listening because I'm in my head?
Right.
But so I had to get myself right, and I had to focus on human connection with myself. Why would I talk to myself so poorly when I wouldn't talk to someone on my team who I'd never met before yesterday when I hired you, but I care about you, and I want to treat you a certain way? Why wouldn't I do that to myself?
Yeah.
So what I did was I looked at it from an internal standpoint first and realized the most important relationship is the one with yourself.
Yeah.
So I started there. Then, as I started to navigate and find research around that and understanding, how many negative thoughts we have and how many are positive and how the brain functions and, all these research topics, right?
Yeah. All the science
Upload on YouTube and Google Scholar, right? And putting it into folders and AI, right? And merging it all together. But what I realized was, wow, my wife is giving me signals when she is frustrated or her battery's low.
Yep.
Meaning, like, I've gotten beaten up all day. You were just at a couple of meetings, doing your thing and working with clients, but my energy's low.
Yeah.
So how do I hear her? How do I see her? How do I provide a solution? And how do we just communicate at a higher level?
Right.
Right. And I think once we start to focus on human connection, we start to reflect on the current state of the relationship.
Yeah.
And, I've been married for 2 years. I read a ton of books and had mentors and read their books and did all the stuff around marriage.
Right.
So I would be prepared for marriage. But the reality is you and I both know, and everybody listening, is you're not prepared for marriage because it's a unique scenario, situation. Things
Right.
change. Things like having a 7-week-old and forgetting the first couple months are sleep deprived and
Right.
difficult. And, I can't accomplish some things that I had set aside in my
Mm-hmm.
plan for business, right? So realizing all that, I've come to that conclusion that most people want to feel heard and seen.
Yep.
And there's 3 ways to do that. And that's the work that I pulled from all these articles and research and Harvard Business Reviews and all of it to realize that it's a shared experience, number one, right? So we're going to build human connection because we're sharing this experience. We're
Definitely.
doing a podcast. We're in this awesome, amazing studio. It's super cool, right? Like we're going to get footage. We're going to have lunch after. It's an experience we're sharing together. So there's human connection occurring.
For sure.
Now, the other one is high or low emotional situation.
Okay.
So say that we aren't in this room having an experience together, but your dad committed suicide and my dad committed suicide.
Now we're
right? That's
bonded.
a high level of
Yeah.
high emotion, and it doesn't always need to be negative.
Right. Yeah, it could be positive too.
Yeah.
Oh, we both do the same thing. Yeah. Whatever.
Say you won the championship for your high school in football.
Sure.
And I did too, right? And maybe
Yeah.
you were a quarterback, maybe I was. Maybe you were the running back, maybe I was a quarterback. But that's an experience we can
Sure.
share. Like, dude, how did it feel after?
Right.
And like, man, were you walking around like I was,
Yeah.
like king shit, right? Like, we can share that.
Yeah.
So those are 2 highly, highly important things
For sure.
when it comes to the human connection
Mhm.
piece. So the third one is the shared beliefs, which wraps everything together, right?
Perfect.
Because what you believe in can dictate certain experiences.
Sure. Yeah.
What you believe in can dictate certain levels of heightened emotions.
Mhm.
So for instance, if you believe in politics on the left side and I believe on the left side, there'll be a level of human connection because we can talk about that.
Mm.
That's a belief system, right?
Yeah.
What you believe about men, what I believe about men, what
Sure.
you believe about women, what you believe about the education system, right?
Mhm.
All those things will create a piece of human connection that will tie us together.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I did a TED Talk on this, and a lot of the comments were around the belief piece because a lot of people with technology growing, with Gen Zs, a lot of stuff, and COVID,
Yeah.
we're not having those experiences together.
Right.
So what we are doing is we're communicating in DMs.
Yeah.
We're communicating in email,
Mhm.
text, things like that. So those experiences aren't occurring, but we're communicating our beliefs.
Yeah.
So after doing all that research, doing the TED Talk, and realizing, okay, wow, human connection is in everything.
Mhm.
Well, now how do we take that into sales? How do we take that into leadership? But more importantly, how do I make sure when I am dating or going to get married or going to have kids that those levels of alignment are at its deepest because I am focusing on human connection, not just my wife's really hot and,
Yeah.
and I love to have sex with her, or, I hate all her friends, but she's this. So I'm like, we've got to build that belief system. We've got to
Yeah.
understand those experiences. We've
Mhm.
got to discuss those situations and scenarios of heightened emotions.
Yeah. We interrupt this episode to talk about Synthesis Tutor, the world's first superhuman math tutor. It is warm, patient, and understanding, and adapts to your child so you never have to worry about them falling behind when it comes to math. In episode 84, we spoke to Chrisman Frank, the CEO of Synthesis, and immediately afterwards, I purchased Synthesis Tutor for my daughter, and it has been an absolute game changer for us. Math used to be a very painful experience. It was frustrating, and there was lots of tears for my daughter when it came to learning math. It's something she's not naturally good at, and we struggled a lot. Now she happily uses Synthesis Tutor every single week, and there's no more frustrating nights. The way it works is that it leverages AI to adapt the experience to your child to not simply master memorization of math facts, but it actually teaches the principles and concepts so that your child can independently solve problems without needing tons of outside help. Because it tailors the experience to your child, it is always adapting and learning where the child is in terms of their development, and it keeps them in the proximal zone of learning so that your child is being challenged but not getting frustrated or defeated by the experience. I am very pleased with our experience on Synthesis Tutor. My daughter's grades have improved in math. It's something that I can now outsource. I don't have to take the time myself to sit there and try and memorize facts with her. She gets excited to do it, and it's fun and engaging for her to learn instead of this frustrating experience, and it doesn't feel like a chore any longer. So we at the Present Fathers podcast highly endorse Synthesis Tutor. There is also a Teams function for those with multiple kids or maybe multiple families want to pool their children together. You can check that out on the website. You can get 10% off with your purchase by going to synthesis.com/PFP. That's synthesis.com/PFP. Go there, check it out, and start supercharging your child's learning experience with the power of AI. Back to the episode.
I actually just wrote a thread on kind of like with the shared experience piece, how like fathers need to make it a priority to like find ways to travel with their family. And it doesn't have to be far or expensive, but making those experiences. And like as I was writing that, I just reflected back on like we've always done a habit of just taking really small trips. They don't necessarily have to be these huge like European tours or anything, right? Like just here in the state of Tennessee, we'll just go to Chattanooga or go here and go there or whatever, like little, basically free, tank of gas. And those are some of our best trips. Like there's a dairy farm up in Bowling Green, Kentucky. We've gone and visited a few times, and my daughter loves it. It's super cool, and it's just like there and back, right? Yeah. So that one is really powerful, and that's where I think too most men today are missing that shared experience thing where they just don't do anything together. Yeah. And that's why is sports so valuable, right? Because it's a shared experience. Why is the military, it's brotherhood and all that kind of, well, it's shared experience, right? And we live in this world of where no one's doing that anymore. So of course you're going to struggle, but if you're a father, like it's on you to cultivate that in your home, right? And then the shared belief thing too, interesting little twist on that, I think, is it's not necessarily from like, what religion or what politics or anything, but it's also kind of like a scale thing where if you have a lot of limiting belief, right, and just say like, I will never be more than this, but I don't share that same like limitation on myself, we're going to have a hard time being actual real friends because I'm going to like see the bigger picture and you're not going to want, there will be like this extra friction. So I think that's a kind of an interesting layer there too, where that's why I challenge men to be really introspective on, like you said, the relationship to yourself, number one, most important. You need to really dive into that because if you're hanging on to all these extra things like that are holding you back, limiting beliefs, self-doubt, all these things, it is absolutely cutting you off from people who are probably more than willing to help you, mentor you, all these things. 100%. But because you're stuck in your own little like prison, you've basically shut the world out, right? And I mean, I did that in business, right? Yeah. Like when I was first starting my businesses, I thought I was the Hulk, right? Yeah. I thought I was,
I know everything.
Let's go. Yeah. I don't need you. And then you start to collaborate with people and you're like, holy shit. Yeah. I've had a lot to learn. Wow. Yeah. Like I didn't even realize that. And that was brilliant. That was literally brilliant. And I would have never even thought of it, let alone implemented. Yeah. So that collaboration piece is huge. And I think to your point with those shared beliefs, like beliefs around money, beliefs around marriage, beliefs around religion in some cases. But like those things are so important because of the triggers that are tied to them. Sure. So when you're introspective and going, okay, what's my outlook on this or what's my position on it? And do I have my stuff together? And is this what I want it to be? Yeah. Going into you first to then have that conversation. Right. Like my wife, she's an entrepreneur. She owns businesses. She just started a marketing company. And, she had the scarcity mindset around like pricing and number of clients. Right. And I was like, there's a solution in scale. So like charge this because it's worth it. And when you get to the point where you think you're overwhelmed, then you raise your prices. Yep. Right. And you still got your consistent monthly revenue. But also on the other side of it, like, why not build a company if to handle X amount of clients if those clients want your services, right? Let's talk about impact. Let's not talk about money. Yeah. Right? So exactly. So what do you do at that point? Let's not worry about it now. Let's not freak out about it now, but let's take steps and towards building a team or what's that scale or when you go to the coffee shop and you run into someone and just talking about these things to then bring in opportunity. Maybe someone has a friend that needs a job.
Yeah.
Maybe we can start talking about this and then in 6 months onboard them.
Right.
Who knows what could
Exactly.
happen? And then that also comes back to the human connection piece
yeah.
is, having that abundance mindset and being able to talk about your business and the reality and, hey, I was worried about scale. So I decided everybody I talk to or run into at the coffee shop, I'm going to ask, hey, do you know anybody that could X, Y, and Z or
Right.
looking for a job? And you start to build those relationships with people.
Yeah.
Like, man, I got a phone call last week from a guy that I did an event. He came to one of my events 3.5 years ago. We haven't spoken really since. He wanted to catch up with me. We sat down. We start talking about his life, and unfortunately, he lost a son. And I was telling him we had several miscarriages, and Caitlin almost passed on the last one last year.
Jeez.
And so we're like, hey, we had a lot going on.
Shared experience.
That human connection, because of he came to the event, we had a good conversation. 3.5 years later, we're sitting down having lunch, and we're talking about suicide. And what I realized was, well, I really want to back his organization because my dad committed suicide, right? And his son committed suicide. So now there's an opportunity for collaboration, for partnership, and that may be like a nonprofit, and yeah, he may take some pay for his work or whatever, but like that is helping families and humans, not just business.
Exactly.
And that started at a business event.
Right.
And 3.5 years later, because of human connection, we're having lunch again and potentially talking about how to help him build that nonprofit and charity to help people committing suicide.
Yeah. There's, I think, a lot of wrong think around money. I think a lot of people inherently believe that if you have more or desire to make more, it means you're greedy. It could be, but usually not, right? And this is where, not everyone should be an entrepreneur, for sure. It's definitely not for everyone. However, if you have that capacity, you should be the best one you can possibly be, because if you become a good man, I'm speaking to the men here for the fathers and everything, but if you can be a real good masculine leader, build a business that provides for others, to your point, the impact and the amount of human lives you are changing with whatever your product or service is fundamentally changing a lot of lives in a good way. And like, I'm at this point, right? Now I'm bringing on other men to be coaches in my program. Because I dared to dream with my thing and have gotten to a point where like, hey, financially we can actually bring on more people and scale this thing. I now get to bless my friends, men that I care about and respect, to also have more ability to bless their families and pay it forward and so on and so forth. And like, there's no greed in that. Yeah. It's literally just, I can amplify how much good I can do with this thing I've built, because my desire isn't to line my pockets. It's to make that impact because it is a people business. So I love those lessons. It's super powerful. Earlier, I want to go back to one thing earlier too. You talked about like the importance of your circle, your network, and leveraging that. Like, I had the opportunity to meet you for the first time working with a mutual friend, Nick Alfano. You were prepping for your big event this past September.
That was
and
a good time,
we were literally
man.
we were wargaming how to get you over the goal line to where you needed to be and all this kind of stuff. And so it was a very business focused thing to start, but it really transitioned into just building relationship and fellowship and all these other great things that we gain that, we had a mission to achieve for you first, right? There's a real problem we need to solve in a very short amount of time. We did that and then just kind of fellowshipped. And I would love for you to talk about how in your journey, right, it's not just about the success in business, how stepping out there, understanding how important the human connection is, how has that journey been for you, and what would your advice be just kind of for like the everyday guy who doesn't realize how much he needs a better network?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things, as I reflect on the human connection piece and talking to the guy who may not see the benefit of the work that goes on the front end, what that benefit looks like on the back end.
Right. The long term, like, for example, you're the 3.5 years later, now you guys have...
A lot of people come to me and they say, how do you have time for that? Meaning, like, how do you have time to reach out to people? How do you have time to check in with people? How do you, I don't have that much time. I'm running a business, right? And it's like, okay, well, without clients, you don't have revenue. Without revenue, you don't have a business.
Correct.
Right? And I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've had no revenue. I've had massive fall offs. I mean, 2020, $1 million out the door within 48 hours? So
ouch.
I would say to that person is, this isn't something that you need to do like, let me pull back. Not everybody has to have a spreadsheet or a CRM to do this.
Right.
I actually am someone who's fucking crazy, and I've got spreadsheets and trackers and graphs.
We're polar opposites,
right? But I also have very high ADHD,
Okay.
and I'm an idea generator. I'm a creator. So like, if I don't have a task grid where I can go and say I'm failing today, it's noon. Let me go finish this task. I don't want to lay it into tomorrow. Right. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And what I realized is, if you, again, it comes back to you when it comes to human connection. If you hate people, you're not going to grow good relationships, and you're not going to benefit from the help of others. If you're in a bad mood, or you think everybody's fucking you over, or you're playing victim, you're not going to go build relationships with others.
Yeah.
Right? But if you wake up and you say, man, I'm grateful I woke up today, and I have an opportunity to just maybe change the trajectory of someone's life by asking them how things are.
Yeah.
That right there should carry your motivation or inspiration across the finish line to maybe just reach out to people. The easiest thing to do, and maybe it's because I'm type A, but the easiest thing to do is, you pop in my head, man, send you a text message.
Yep.
Like, it's 2024. We're going into 2025. That takes 13 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? But people say, oh, I'll do it later. Or they shut down the thought.
Right.
Just pull out your phone and send the message. And the easiest thing is, hey, how are things?
Yeah.
You don't need to go, and I would advise you to do this, especially in business, to go research things and bring stuff to people to talk about that's not just, hey, how are you?
Sure.
But if you don't know what to say, or you don't have time to go check their Facebook to see what happened in the last couple weeks, start off with that.
Yeah, you just be real simple too. Like, hey, man, you were on my heart today and just wanted to check in.
I was thinking about your brother.
Yeah.
How are you?
Yep.
How are things? And I use the how are things because the response to that is going to tell you what's important to that person, what's on their mind.
Yeah.
Right? So if I say, hey, George, how are things?
And I start talking about my marriage.
Then I know that marriage is on your mind, and I'm not going to pitch you a service, a product. I'm not going to invite you to an event.
Right.
I'm not going to go the business route.
Yeah.
I use the spreadsheet because that happens a lot, where my goal is, I'm reaching out to you. I did think of you. And then I also thought, wow, you probably are someone who wants to work on your goals. And I've got a 4 disciplines of execution framework. So in my mind, it's like, I'm thinking about you. I want to ask how you are, but also I think you can benefit from a product that I can offer.
Right.
Well, I don't go in and he says, oh, things are good, just working on the marriage. I'm not going to offer the product, right? And I don't care if it's the last week of December and you should probably do your goals before 25.
Right.
I'm just not going to offer the product.
Right.
And I think that's where people remove human connection from sales.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Because they don't know how to structure it and ask the question to find out the emotional capacity before they go pitch or sell something.
Yeah.
The other thing...
Well, and that real quick on that too, that when you have that type of conversation and you don't make a pitch right away, sorry, we're getting all salesy here, but you have the opportunity to then do like a value up as a follow-up, right? Yeah. Where like I talked about my marriage and then you basically give me a freebie in a week or like, hey brother, I just really thought about what you said. Hey, I found this article. I think you'll really enjoy that. It might help you a lot. That is huge, right? And again, this isn't to take advantage of people. You're trying to match the value that you can offer someone and kind of get them out of their own way from a sales 100%. Point of view, right? Like with my program, there are numerous people who reach out where I'm like, man, you really need this, but I can tell that you're just in your own way. Like it's not a fit.
I mean, it's the 25. What is it? The 25 decision-making biases.
Yeah.
Like most. I mean, after learning those, I was like, "Holy shit, I'm every one of these."
Yeah, we all are.
We all are, right? And to understand that and to be able to respond that way isn't manipulative. Mm-mm. And I used to think it was, but it's not. Yeah. And here's why: because I know the product, I know the service I'm providing. Right. And I have the receipts, man. I got
exactly.
I got the folder,
the impact.
The favorite folder with 387 text messages from people the last 24 months saying thank you and wow and this is amazing and I needed it and I can't believe I almost didn't do it.
Yeah.
Once you start getting those and you get the receipts, it's like, okay, a majority of people are benefiting from this. There's massive impact. You need it.
Right.
And you fit the exact person that I've helped over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
So sorry to go on the sales tangent.
No, that's great. Well, because I think that, so we talked sales, but that same method of thinking I think applies heavily as a husband and father.
100%.
Because and I teach this in my program, and it is adapted kind of from a sales methodology, effective communication styles, right? There's essentially 4 archetypes of people. There's controllers, supporters, all these different types of people. It's the burden on you as the communicator to change the way you give the information so that they can actually receive it in their communication style. It's not on them to adapt to you. It's on you to adapt to them. That's from a sales point of view. But I think that's even more important as a husband and father. I need to understand my wife and become a student of my wife to know her communication styles, how she really hears the information. And I need to make sure that I'm putting it in the right way for her, right? Totally. It's probably not how I communicate to soldiers, for example. Same thing with my daughter, right? I need to make sure that I'm adapting to how she can receive what I'm telling her. And I think a lot of guys... no, you're good.
You taking that ownership, though, that's leadership.
Right. Yeah, and
not pawning it off.
All men listening, if you are married or have kids too, you're a leader. Welcome to the show, right? You volunteered for this.
You got the badge that you didn't have to.
Exactly.
You signed up automatically.
You wanted to be a husband, or you wanted to be a dad, or maybe you didn't want to, but you are now. So it's your responsibility. But yeah, that piece about understanding how important communicating properly is. It is a little salesy, right? But it's a very valuable skill because, again, it's not to extort people. It's like, I need to teach my daughter a lesson, right? So that she doesn't get the boo-boo again or whatever. Okay, well, I can't talk to her like a business associate. I need to adapt that into, 9-year-old language and communication understandings and everything. And if you fail to learn that or even attempt it, you're kind of just like a hammer walking around just swinging at everything, and you're going to break a lot of things. And unfortunately, as men, we're swinging that hammer inside our own home. And now we can adapt this to like angry outbursts and lack of emotional regulation. And this is a big problem really fast. So sorry to go down that rabbit hole.
You put a hole in the wall, you call someone to fix it. You put a hole in your relationship. There's no one to call that's just going to go and patch that up besides you.
So, I mean, the sales conversation isn't necessarily wasted because that exact same thought process applies with, that's a great model. If you're struggling with how to connect with your wife and you're like, oh, it's kind of awkward, or I don't know how to like open the door again to just having, emotional connection again, just throughout your day, just send her a text. Hey, honey, just thinking about you. I love you. Do that. I do. I've talked about this too, the sticky notes, right? So I'll just randomly, I don't do it every morning. I do it somewhat consistently, but a little bit randomized on purpose. But I'll just write little affirmations, or, maybe something happened the day before and I'm like, my kid did something or my wife did something. I'm so proud of you, just like a heartfelt little couple sentences, and I stick it somewhere for them to find later, and they'll find it later. And then there you go. It just shows that you're thinking about them for more than 2 seconds, right? Totally. And those.
Do you think your wife's beautiful?
Absolutely.
Why not tell her?
I do tell her
but
all the time.
But
you're right.
Like, why not? Oh, I just got off a business call, or I'm at lunch, and instead of scrolling Facebook, just send a text message.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, you're beautiful. And funny enough, I just saw what you posted on Facebook, and blah blah blah. Right, like. And those little things I think are just so important, and in everything, everything, every relationship. You talked about those communication styles, and it brought back a memory, and I want to share the story with everybody. 2 years ago, my wife and I, she's an entrepreneur. She owns a chiropractic. She's a chiropractor. She owns her own company, and she's now starting a marketing company. But 2 years ago, I'm having this first conference I threw in a 65,000 square foot facility, hundreds of people, 12 speakers just going bananas. And I want to create a journal so that way people could have something to take the action steps and build it. And we sat down and I said, let's partner on it. And the first meeting, I came, and I've been thinking about this for a week, and I'm prepared, and I've got this, and she wants to brainstorm, right? And in that moment, because I didn't realize the connection of how I would communicate to increase my company culture, how I would communicate to increase sales, I didn't use those methodologies in that. And it was a fucking disaster. It was a disaster of a meeting at our kitchen table, which to me was even more embarrassing when I started to reflect on it, that how did we not be able to communicate literally at the center of most people's homes, right? The kitchen table is like where you make a lot of your big decisions, where you eat dinner.
Family meetings, all
of it, right?
Yeah.
Projects, arts, crafts, like all of it. Homework with kids. And in that moment, I was like, wow, I didn't use any of those skills on communication. Now you fast forward and I'm helping her with the marketing company and some strategies, and utilizing those techniques have gotten to the point where we're like, I'm meeting, hiring a babysitter, because we've been doing this lately. We've hired a babysitter to have a meeting about building a company.
Smart.
It's like expenses before we even file the LLC. Can we wrap those into the P&L, please, and have a good write-off the first year?
Startup costs.
But I'm like, okay, that 4-hour meeting that cost us $150 for a babysitter, there has to be a strategy, but the strategy isn't my strategy. It has to be a cohesive.
Right.
So what we've done is like, we talk about things, we go to because I'm the spreadsheet guy, we go to the task grid tracker. Right. And I just read it. So I'm good knowing like she did all this and this is what she's working on and this is pending. And we have like a conversation. Then we kind of just do our own thing on our couple projects and we help each other.
Right.
But I came into it like, why don't you have that done? Or why don't you haven't been thinking about this? And, you know, I've built this and that's not how she wants to have the conversation.
Right.
She wants to do it as a group. She's more of like the counselor, right? She wants the outside counsel and to talk about it. Where I'm like, I mean, I'll take the biggest, you know me, man. I'll take the biggest risk possible if I believe in it. I don't need a day to think about it. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah, you're a doer.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. All right, we're going to have an event, man. Collaborate. All right, when's the date? All right, let's go.
Yeah, the 4 types are doer, talker, supporter, and controller, right? And so people can be like a blend of 2. They're usually a blend of 2. Like I'm a doer, talker, 100%. Like to the max, you know, and it's like they're risk takers. They make decisions quickly. They actually get annoyed if you give too much information. Like if you start trying to show me your spreadsheet, you're going to wear me out. I'm gonna be like, bro, I'm 7 steps ahead of you already. I get it.
Eyes glazing.
I don't need all the details. Then there's other people who are the exact, like you need all the details to feel comfortable. You know, and so it's just a little bit of that awareness. Like your wife has a style. Yeah. Your children have a style, and they're probably all different too. Yep. And so it's just a good little thought exercise to kind of evaluate, like, dang, how do I? Because you naturally are going to communicate the way that you are programmed. Like, so I'm a doer talker. I'm going to all energy, excitement and stuff. And sometimes that like makes my wife anxious because it's like too amped, right? So I've had to learn how to be a little bit more stoic and be like, ask questions and make sure that she needs all the variables answered to, right? To feel safe.
You and I are like.
Yeah. So, but my point is, you need to think about these things because the most important relationships is yourself first and then your family and then everything else is secondary. And if you can keep your house in order in a sense, that is easier to pour over into the other aspects than the other way around. Like we've talked about, we both talked about how in our careers, we like were, you know, Mr. Go-Getter and we were the man and all that kind of stuff. And then we did literally none of it at home. Yep. But if you do it in the other way around, it actually pays dividends better. So
it's funny. We say the things out loud,
sure,
but we don't do the actions that support the things, right? And I think that's why, like, when I started doing my success statement for the year, like that was the best reflection because I was saying all the things and there was no lead measures leading up to me doing the things. Right. So like I get on a podcast and say I do all this stuff, but who does that benefit? A random person hearing it that may want to implement it, but it's not benefiting my home because I'm not actually doing it. Like that makes no sense, you know? Yeah. So I've definitely felt victim to that at a point, but I think the biggest thing is just having the awareness, right? And I think that's a blessing for me to be so aware, but I also think like that level of awareness, we can also think that things are great without those communication styles and doing work on the front end.
I'd like to go back, you know, sounds like you had a pretty rough upbringing with your parents, you know, substance abuse, you said pills, right? And then you said your father committed suicide. Yep. So obviously that left an impact on you. Yeah. Do you think it took you a long time to really kind of make these epiphanies and kind of understand how important the human connection was because of your background? And I guess also, if you can just elaborate too on kind of like, what did you learn through all of that? Because there's a lot of people probably in a similar situation that, you know, you can kind of just encourage the men out there listening to this.
So let's let's think. So 11 years ago, my dad committed suicide. I'm 35, so that was what, 24?
Yeah.
And I found out when my parents were addicted to OxyContin at 14.
Mm.
So almost from the time of finding that out to my dad killing himself was 10 years. 10 years from him killing himself to where I'm at now.
Mm.
So from the OxyContin thing, I probably just healed from that 3 or 4 years ago.
Mm.
So it took almost 20 years
Yeah.
to get over that. And what I was doing was I was drinking a lot and I was overworking a lot and all my relationships were failing.
Mm.
So
Was it a little bit of the, like, I need to just rely on me because I can't trust anyone else type of thing?
So
Okay.
remember when I said earlier, I didn't realize
Yeah.
like you can go farther and create more impact with others.
Yeah.
And I was doing it all
If
myself.
you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far,
Jim
go,
Rohn
go
quote.
together.
Yeah. I think that was the trauma that I was dealing with because I was so mad that why were my parents the ones that got fucked up?
Right.
And here's the crazy thing. My parents told me not to drink and do drugs my entire life. Like, they were great parents. They had great morals. They were just living a lie, right? And it's not like they went out and said, hey, I'm going to do OxyContin today, right? My mom got half her lung removed, got prescribed it. My dad works on telephone poles for the electric company, slipped on a rig and slid down, broke both of his knees.
Jeez.
Prescribed OxyContin.
Well, and this is back to, I'm just trying to, like, timeline-wise, this is back when they were just throwing it out like candy, right?
And then they didn't realize that how addictive it was, and then they cut you off.
Because this is like the mid to late 2000s, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. This was in it. This was in it, right? Like,
man.
So all that to be said, yes, I never talked to anybody about it. It's never actually been confirmed my dad did commit suicide. So, like, my mom doesn't, like, know some of the things that were going on, and I tried to talk to her about it, and she was like, no way. And she didn't know that my dad asked me to get him a gun 2 weeks before that. My dad upped his life insurance policy a month before that, right? Like, there's certain things that happened where I have more information, and I took that in to make that decision. So, like, that's not even, there's not even closure on that yet.
So the police never ruled it?
No.
It's like an open...
It said he was diabetic, his sugar was low. I think he took something to lower it and died in his sleep. I think it was purposeful.
Oh.
The other thing is he asked me to come to lunch with him, and we didn't really talk a ton, like, often. We were still cool.
Yeah.
But he asked me to come to lunch with him a week before that, and he never does that. And I was like, where's my mom? He's like, oh, she's not feeling good. Well, why would I come to lunch with just you and not, right? So, like, I've got other pieces to it.
Right.
But ultimately, I played the victim, bro. That's
Right.
really what it came down to.
He abandoned me. And
That's really what it came down to, was I was the victim of, like, you know, my parents are fucked up, and, you know, I wanted to accomplish this, and why that, and why this. And when I finally got through all that, it started from business and education. Like, to unravel that, I've never seen a therapist, but to unravel some of those things that are holding you back for me to be the best entrepreneur, I realized in those strategies for business that I needed to do some deep work and some self-work. And I got to the point where, man, I was looking in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. And then I woke up the next day and said, I'm going to change it. And haven't had a drip of alcohol in 2 years, and haven't even had an inclination to do it. And, you know, cut out a lot of the people that were terrible in my life. Some being family, some being friends for 20 years, and have really boiled it down to the people that I completely 100% align with.
Yeah.
Like, I want the magnetism to flow.
Right.
I want the energy to be high. I want to give you energy. I want to get energy. Right? And, like, for the longest time, I never put myself in win-win situations because I was always okay losing. So, like, for instance, and I'll relate it back to business, but, like, I've given you 5 free consulting sessions, right? And you've never even texted me on my birthday. You've never even asked me how I'm doing. You've never asked me who you can connect me with, who you can help me with, right? But I'm still doing these free sessions because I care, and I know you need the resource. Well, I'm not doing that anymore. Not because I don't want to help people, but because I'm at a point right now where I want everybody to win.
Yeah.
And if I'm not winning, then I can't help more people win.
Right.
So why not have a situation where everybody wins?
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately was suppressed because I grew up and realized I was never winning because my
Yeah.
parents were fucked up, and that upset me so much.
Right.
Like, I literally had so much anger. I remember senior year of high school, I had a black eye and a bloody eye every single day. I got in 21 fights.
Whoa.
21 fights
Just
in
because
one
you were
year.
so pissed off. And
My senior prom, I got the blood vessel popped, 2 black eyes. Like, it was just a year of taking it out on anything and anyone. And it wasn't like me going and picking on kids and beating them up. It was like the toughest kid in the school who was, you know, the linebacker, me being like, yeah, I hooked up with your girlfriend last week. You know, like, just because I didn't care for the abuse almost. So I think a lot of that, when I reflect on it, a lot of that comes back up. And I think some of it still comes up today. I don't think you're ever over your traumas. I think it's just a progression towards, you know, benefiting you better in the season you're in. Yeah,
for sure. Can you elaborate more on, you talked about like cutting people out, right? So you made the decision for yourself to start changing your life, but also a big element of that was letting people go. This is something I hear all the time from people that like, oh, I just don't know how to do that, or I don't know if I can do that. For me, I think boundaries is an indication of just how much you value yourself, right? Yeah. And if you're unwilling to set boundaries around people, you're essentially people pleasing.
Yep.
And it's codependency. You're just you don't want to make them unhappy, so you're willing to lose yourself, right? Yep. And in reality, that literally kills you. Like, it raises stress. There's
you wake up one day and you realize, dude, I'm doing nothing I want to do in my life.
Right.
And then you pull the trigger in some cases, right? And it's like, dang.
Can you just walk me through a little bit of like some of what you did specifically to come to terms with that and be at ease with letting people go? Because I think that's going to help a lot of people.
I think, and I'm seeing this with 2 friends right now, and I'll start with the alcohol side of things. When you stop drinking, most people think that, oh, it's going to be hard to actually stop consuming the alcohol, okay?
Right.
And it is for most people, right? Like,
right, if you're physically addicted to it, for sure.
Right, but I think a lot of people are addicted and not physically addicted.
Yeah.
Because we do this like Thursday night drinks and Saturday party and Sunday brunches, and it's not like you're drinking a bottle of vodka at 7 a.m. every day to survive, right? And there is those people, but I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who are just wrapped up in it.
The social drinker.
Yeah. What you realize when you stop drinking is that's not the biggest problem you have to face. The biggest problem you have to face is, now that I'm sober, the realities of who I am, how I was acting, and what network and support systems are actually around me, right? Like, I said this to someone on a podcast a year ago. I said, the day that I realized that I was rich because I was doing so much business with alcoholics was a day that I realized I'll never pick up a drink ever again. Meaning, like, all the people around me that I was, whether I was in real estate, selling houses to, or doing investment deals, like, I was making tons of money. Everybody around me was a drunk. Everybody around me was going through what I was going through, and they had no one to pull them out of it. And luckily, my wife pulled me out of it, right? She said, hey, if you drink again, I'm going to have this kid alone. And I had an event, right? My business events. I had it at I remember this so clear. I had it at the Virgin Hotel private club in the basement. It was this awesome event, packed out, over 100 people. You had to, like, I didn't give the location until like 2 hours before.
Oh, okay. All right.
We went in the back door in the basement. The instructions were like, go out in the alley and look for the black double door and knock, and someone will come out and get you.
Like a speakeasy type thing. Yeah.
It's $7,500 to be a member here a year. So it was an amazing event, and I was the host, and I was selling a bunch of business, and everybody wanted to buy me drinks after, and I got home at 4 a.m. My wife wasn't there. And she said, and she went to her cousins, and she said, if you keep doing this, going out or drinking and driving, because I mean, I'm ashamed to say it, dude. I drink and drive like a motherfucker. Like, I thought it was a game at one point in my life. Like, I thought it was fun. It's awful. It's embarrassing to say. It's so embarrassing. But she said, I won't be here ever.
Wow.
And that's when I had to be like, okay, I've heard this a million times. Every relationship with every woman has come down to me either valuing my friends which ultimately was me valuing the alcohol and the fun
right.
over staying home
Distraction, really.
and spending quality time.
Yeah.
So that was a big moment for me. And at that event, coming home late and waking up the next day and her not like, I just felt like shit, man, and was like, dude, I'm gonna lose this.
Yeah.
And this is the one thing I can't lose. And
Yeah,
I'm gonna
man.
have a child, and I don't want to, I want to have a happy home and do this right, or at least give it an A for effort.
Yeah.
Right.
You
I'm
gotta
not
give it all you got.
perfect. I
Yeah.
can fuck things up. I
Right.
do all the time, but like at least if I'm trying really
Right.
hard, man, I can look in the mirror and go, okay, this discipline to accomplish this is actually giving me internal pride.
Yeah.
Right? Whether I'm winning or losing,
Right.
but the discipline and doing it the right way that I think, at least I have pride now.
Right. You can stand by it, if it doesn't.
If it doesn't pan out.
Well, it's the opposite of victimhood, right? It's like, hey, I did everything I could possibly do and it just didn't go my way, right? But a victim would be like, oh, because of all these things, that's
X,
why.
Y, and Z.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, thanks for sharing that, man. I know it's very personal stuff, but I admire your courage and ownership of that because I really do believe people are their lives will be positively impacted by hearing you share that.
Yeah.
And overcome it. Because it's really easy to look at the success or look at the events and the business stuff and be like, oh, he's got it all together. And it's like, not really.
Well, I mean, let's just talk about it, right? Like the war room session we did was because I was 33,000 negative at that time, like 14 days before a conference.
Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah,
so the
you
reality of it is
50 more or a lot of tickets to be sold.
I needed
still.
80 tickets.
Yeah.
And we didn't sell the 80, but we profited. So there were some other solutions that came out of that.
Right.
But the reality of it was I'm looking at a $35,000 loss right before I'm about to have my second child.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the real shit that's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
Where I have to reach out to friends and go, bro, I've been trying everything. I'm in the middle, right? I've got a really small team. It's me and an assistant and a buddy helping me out. Like, we're going to have 200 people at this thing, 11 speakers, all the AV, the production, the content. We're selling marketing packages, the tables, the gifts, like the MCs, the strategy, all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. It's not easy. And it doesn't go perfect. And what you see in that event is bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
It's not real.
Yeah.
And I'll even give you one more.
It's the iceberg thing, right? It's that you see the top of it. There's all this stuff behind it.
So that's all the stuff leading up. That's all the stuff leading up to the event.
Yeah.
Well, the reality of it is I'm backstage at the event and I go, it's 9:02. We're supposed to start 2 minutes ago. What the fuck's going on? And my AV guy goes, dude, the internal AV team said the LED screen's broken right now. So the whole conference with the big LED screen on that just wasn't working.
Oh, man.
So, like, you go into these things and you see these images in the post-production, but, like, the first 30 minutes before that, everything was falling apart. And it was so funny because
Murphy's Law, man.
I turned the corner and one of the speakers, who's a good friend of mine, Nicole Kramer, she's absolutely amazing. We'll have to introduce you to her. She's amazing. She's like came down the hall and she like talked to the AV guy going out, the photographer, and like she's like walking back and they're all telling her the problems. And then she turns the corner to me and I'm hysterically laughing.
Yeah.
And she's like, and I'm like, I don't know what else to do. Like, this is all falling apart, right? But the reality of telling you that story and all that is all the things that are happening behind the scenes to get to that final point, to that iceberg moment. We're all going through the same shit.
Right.
Especially as dads, especially as husbands, especially as business owners, whatever it is.
Right.
Like, we're all going through that.
Yeah.
Because I go and share that story with someone, and they're like, oh, let me tell you about 2017, bro.
Right, exactly.
And I'm like, oh, your screen just didn't turn back on. Mine did.
Right, exactly. That's it really gets to that point of this like self-made man, myth. It's a myth. And people will be like, "That's you're wrong. There's self-made men." I'm like, bro, Arnold Schwarzenegger said there's no such thing as a self-made man, and like, he might literally be the definition of the closest thing to it. I mean, objectively, and it's as simple as the lone wolf gets devoured.
That's it.
Straight up. Like, the wolf only is able to kill and hunt and get its food because it's got a pack.
Yep.
And whether it's business or fatherhood or being a husband, like, you need a pack around you to when things go wrong to kind of lift you up, but also like the war room session we had, kind of war game and how to fix this problem, because you have your view, right? But someone else has different perspectives, and
Yep.
it just amazes me how many people try to go through life totally alone and think they can just shoulder it all on their own, and
Totally.
they just break. But
And here's something that I want to share too, right? So we talked about that session you and the boys did, and they helped me, and it ended up, some of that strategy ended up working, and we ended up being profitable, right? Like, that's all amazing. But I want to talk about the part if that didn't work. That session, from an emotional, mental standpoint, from a human connection standpoint, rose me up and motivated me so much that just that feeling alone was so nice compared to what I was personally feeling the last 3 or 4 days prior to that, right? So, like, say that none of that worked, that session was still important, and not from a strategy standpoint maybe, but from an emotional mindset standpoint.
I mean, I saw it in your, you changed, your face physically changed over the course of the session, because
before that I did 3 or 4 strategies and none of them worked.
You went from desperation of like, there's no way out, to like, whoa, there's tons of options available to me. And then, also it's that subconscious level of, you had all these other dudes who aren't necessarily going to make anything off of helping you, just fully committed to like, let's solve this together. Right. And it takes work to cultivate that. Right. Like, and I was only there because we have a mutual friend who's like, hey, come on down and let's do it. And I'm really thankful he did. Now my network has grown from this. Right. And it's just, but you got to be willing to put yourself out there. You got to be willing to ask for the help in the first place. I'm sure you asked Nick for help, right, before that happened. So,
well, I think that's the other thing too, is like, and when you're working or you're friends with people who are doing big things in life, and I think that's going back to cutting out the circle, right? Like, the people that I was drinking with, that makes sense. But like, when I really think about it, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have had anybody to go to. But Nick's doing big things. Nick's leveling up every year. Nick's hustling. Nick believes in impact. Right? There's a human connection because of shared beliefs. Shared experiences. We both throw events. We both speak. We both do these things, right? Like, those heightened emotions. We've both thrown an event and lost thousands and thousands of dollars before, right? Like, so that's why that human connection was so deep. And then he knows it. He's like, this is fucking no joke. Like, this could really, you could lose a lot of money. I've been there. We have human connection. Well, let me pull in some of my people.
Right.
Because I know how important this is for Jim, because I know how important it was for me, and I've lost a lot of money in events too.
Right.
That just doesn't happen magically.
Yeah,
it has to happen with me putting myself around those type of people.
For sure.
Do you know how me and Nick Alfano met?
No, I
DM'd him randomly.
Really? So you just...
Never met him in person, didn't know who he was, saw what he was doing online, was like, let me see if this dude's legit. And he was legit.
That's awesome.
When we met up and talked, and we've been friends, and he's legit.
That's awesome.
And going back to the point around human connection, when I said, we've got to be good. Our we've got to want to meet people. We've got to see the good in people.
Yeah.
At that time, I was coming off of a conference where a lot of the speakers weren't great people. A lot of the speakers didn't do what they said. They didn't do what was in the contract. They dropped off right after. They didn't do some of the other stuff they were supposed to do post-event.
Gotcha.
So I was in a place right before that where I was really negative. And I was like, fuck speakers, man. These professional development liars, they're assholes.
Yeah.
This guy's got 2 million followers, and he fucking, blows off the night before, even though it's under contract, and like, just because of his ego, right? I was really negative. I was really victim.
Yeah.
And I had to think through that of like, what I'm teaching and telling other people is I need to spin this first and then go reach out to people.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was I spun my mindset and said, not all these people are bad, but I'm going to go find the good ones.
Right.
So that DM was part of me saying, hey, I'm not going to get around good people if I don't think there are good people.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to build good relationships if I don't think there's good relationships to be built. So I'm not going to send DMs. I'm not going to like stuff. I'm going to be upset or pissed off, and I'm not going to give that person a like. But that like, in some cases, I was liking some people's stuff and commenting, and they reached out to me, and now we're like great friends.
There you go.
But it all started with me going, not everybody's bad, Jim. You do believe that 99% of the people are good on this earth, holistically, which is one of my core values. And so let's get back to that. And I started reaching out to people.
Right.
And now here we are.
It's so I talk about this all the time. Everything is mind control, especially the words you're using with yourself.
Yep.
That might be the most powerful form of mind control. And the way we talk to ourselves essentially forms our beliefs.
Yep.
And like Nick says, is the programming. But that what you believe to be possible is all you'll ever achieve, right? And it is, we put these glass ceilings on ourselves all the time.
Yep.
And I can't wait to introduce you to him. His name is David Waldy. He had this conversation with me, and I was weighing my way, and it was with money, about business and everything, asking for the scarcity mindset stuff. But when I shattered that glass ceiling, thanks to his help, it was just like, oh my goodness, I have held myself back so much in ways I don't even know if I can calculate, by just not believing it could happen to me or for me or whatever. And so I started realizing that instead of saying like, why me, or why did this happen to me, just think, well, why not me?
Why not me?
Right? And it, it sounds a little woo woo and all that kind of stuff, and it's not going to magically solve your whole life, but you start seeing that, like, I'm not going to cap myself at this much per month, or I can only get this fit, or my marriage can only be this good, or whatever the limitation is. When you start to just, hey, I'm not going to be discontent with what I have. Like, I'm grateful for what I have, but I realize now that there's growth that can be attained, and I'm not going to stop that. That's not selfish. That's not arrogant. That's not being, discontented or anything. It's this weird kind of dynamic that really starts to shift how you show up across the board. But I love that, man. That's really powerful.
So
go for it.
With that specifically, Impact Effect, the conference, my consulting, the community, all that stuff, our tagline is break barriers, create impact. And the break barriers comes from that exact thing.
Love it.
Is like reduce the scarcity, increase the abundance, and break the mental barriers in order to create the impact. Yeah. So I'm in 100% in alignment.
We spend a whole week on mindset in my 12-week course, right? And man, that's like the turning point for like all the guys who come through. Yeah. They're starting to build some confidence. They're feeling better by like the first 3 weeks, and then we have that week, and they're just like, like their heads explode and like, I get it now. And you just watch those epiphanies happen. And then that's where it really gets fun, is you start to see how they start treating their families better, and they start, their work is better, or their career, or whatever they're doing. Just they become a different man. And it's I think this is where most people are stuck today, is that narrative we play in our own head because of whatever, right? Trauma, conditioning, name it. But getting control of that is super powerful. So I love what you're doing, man.
I think too, the mindset stuff, like when I was doing all these goals workshops the last month, like and now that you're saying this, I guess I started my goal setting workshop with mindset, because the first question was around, a lot of people come in and want to create 5 wildly important goals around business. Mm-hmm. But the first question of like, is that the only important thing in your life? Well, then we start creating 2 or 3 out of those 5 around personal life, time at home, those things. So it's like, it has to start with that mindset of, I got to change the mindset to focus on it. Right. And have the clarity around it. Yeah. And I think that once you get that clarity,
it becomes like your destination, right? Or your North Star, right? And so now you know where to navigate to. I mean, the winds are going to blow you left and right, and things are going to happen, but you'll know how to navigate back, right? So I love that. All right, we got a few more minutes. Let's rapid fire some fatherhood questions.
Let's do it.
Your kids are still relatively young still, but one of the questions we love to ask every dad is kind of just, what's a core memory so far in your fatherhood journey? Just one, like when people ask you, like, what do you love about being a dad? Just like something that really sticks out.
I would say the joy that I see the kids have, meaning like those little micro moments. I've really tried to, like
the purity of it, right?
Yeah. So like, Ellie yesterday said, "Hey, Daddy, I'm hungry. I want cheese. Do you want cheese?" Right? And like, that sounds so stupid to probably people listening, but like the joy in her face, and then like the instant joy I had of like, wow, she's starting to actually communicate, like conversation, dude. She's 2. Yeah. Like what? Yeah. And then like, we're eating a little thing of cheese like on a Monday, like at 2:00 in the afternoon. Right. And I started to like take snapshot moments. Right. So like, I'm in the present, it's happening, and I'm like, and I literally close my eyes, and then I like lean back, and I'm like, this, I want to be a memory. Yeah. And then, because I'm an analytical tracker guy,
you wrote it down.
I have something in my notes.
I love it.
It's a document that I made 2 years ago when I started my journey to change, transform. It's called Ellie Will Be Like ... This started my whole transformation and what I'm doing now and pivoting out of real estate and all that. And so I created Ellie Will Be Like, and I just started writing down all these things I want my daughter to be like.
Yeah.
And then at the end, since she was born, then she was born. I did this before she was born. Then I started writing down these micro moments. So I've got this just beautiful document in my notes that I can go to, and I go to it when I'm feeling down, right? So like this came from business. So you're consulting all these people,
Sure, yeah.
and you've got a shitty week, and you don't land a deal, and a fucking expense comes up, and your website that you didn't want to pay for, and you want to transform, but it hit, and it was $800, and I would go to these text messages of like, dude, you changed my life. Man, I'm so glad I met you. Dude, you're a blessing. You're a godsend, right? All these text messages in business. Well, when I'm down in my personal life, like, oh man, I really wish that would happen, or this, like we wanted to go on this vacation, but we couldn't because of this, and damn, I really wanted to go there, or whatever. I go to that document, and I'm like, look at all these present moments.
It's that perspective. Yeah, that gratitude, man. That's beautiful. We had a previous guest, Harrison Shank, recommend that dads take like a Google Doc and just like every time something happens, just write a sentence in there.
Yeah.
And then over time, you'll have like this huge repository of just all these memories. And I was like, man, that's genius.
We're going to start this Christmas writing a letter to both of our children every Christmas Eve.
Oh, man.
And we were going to do birthdays and stuff, but we were like, no, Christmas is perfect because it's the end of the year.
Right.
So we can just do a year recap, like 24, but we're not like tying it into like New Year's or goals.
Right.
Like this is literally just like, let's write down all the things we love. Let's write down some of the struggles and then create that one moment that we can share with our child in the future.
I love that.
And I've been doing some research on it because I'm a nerd, but a lot of people are saying like, do it at 18, give them the letters. And I was like, and me and Caitlin talked last night about it actually. And she's like, at 18, did you give a fuck about if your parents would give you those letters? And I was like, maybe we wait till like 21 or 22, right? Because like if me at 18, I'd be like, cool.
Yeah, thanks.
It's like trash bag, I don't give up. Whatever. So we're trying to figure out timeline to give it to them, but we're gonna start it. We're gonna start.
You'll have it available. I love that. You're in the thick of it with the infant. So I'd love your answer to this question. It's if you could rewind and give like current you could give former you like one piece of dad advice, like hey, you're about to be a dad. This is the number one thing you need from Jim, from older Jim to little Jim.
Yep.
What's that thing?
I tried to take a sabbatical time off the last 12 weeks, and I failed at it, meaning like it was really hard. It's because I'm so tied to human connection and people. Like people give me energy, man. Yeah. Like I can't sit at my house and work from home all day. Like I'm just miserable. So I think for me, realizing that because I kind of did this sabbatical, but I didn't do it, and I worked, and I only took certain clients, and I still had some clients, and people are pressuring me. This was something that I learned in this time was people are pressuring me to do stuff, to do business with them, and I'm telling them I'm off. Yeah. And so I had to cut those people out of my life. In this season right now, there's 3 people that just didn't respect that I said, I'm on paternity leave. Like, I'm a male. I'm taking time. I own my own company. Yeah. Like, I create the policy.
Exactly.
But anyways, all that to be said, it's either I'm all in or I'm all out on work. That would be what I need to do for the first 3 months.
Really set those, like,
or get
parameters
paid
for
help.
yourself.
We don't have help, we don't have family here. So there's there's none of that. So I think that would be the decision for me because the last 7 weeks, brother, we're really tough, man. Yeah. Really tough. Just mentally, my wife's not doing her business. I'm not really doing mine. We're both home all day. Yeah. You just get the baby down and the 2-year-old runs over and pokes him in the eye. Oh, no. And then, they both shit themselves and then it's just chaos and no one's napped today and it's 4 o'clock and like.
There's poop everywhere and
I mean, it's what we all go through. So I think just defining it like, hey, am I going to take off a month? Then my business phone's off and I need to communicate it on the front end better.
For sure.
I didn't really communicate it as well on the front end to my people. or prospects that wanted to sign
Right.
on. And so then I was doing some work, and then it was like
Right.
I was just all over the place. man.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I would just say define what the first 3 months would look like to the T. I was a little bit optimistic on sleep. I was a little bit, because Ellie was just so good, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Our
yeah.
first child, she like we didn't have every half hour he's awake.
It's always the second one.
yeah.
That's what I've heard.
First one, she's
Yeah.
like, yeah, go put it. We'd go to restaurants,
Yep.
she'd sleep the whole time,
It's
like
hilarious.
so.
Yeah, man. Jim, it's been a real pleasure. Before we wrap, where can people find you? Where can they follow you and support you?
Yeah, Jim Morris on all social media, the real Jim Morris on social media, and then impacteffect.com.
All right.
Yeah.
Jim, it's been a pleasure, man. Any last words of advice for the viewers?
Go text someone you're thinking about today. Let them know you were thinking about them. Ask them how are things, and see where that leads.
Yeah, buddy. That's a good one. Well, appreciate you coming in, man. It's been a
Appreciate
great
you,
time.
brother.
All right, we're going to wrap. Let's get climbing that mountain of fatherhood. We will see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you're on YouTube, drop a subscription to us. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It helps greatly. If you are also ready to level up as a man, check out Elite Sentinel Coaching, our program designed specifically for men, where we forge men into leaders. We turn cowards into kings, weaklings into warriors. Become the hero in your story. Join us today.